What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today we're back to talk about, you guessed it, Warhammer 40K. And I guess this is more 30K, but today we are talking about the missing primarchs, the lost and the forgotten, the 2nd and the 11th legions. So throughout the lore of Warhammer, both pre-heresy and post-heresy, there have been little inklings as to what happened to the lost legions. Were they purged? Were they torn into the warp? Like, the theories go on and on and on as to who these people could be, what happened to them, where are they now, will they be returning? And for the longest time, people just assumed that the 2nd and the 11th were just empty placeholders, so that the consumer, the player, the wargamer, can craft and create their own lore for their own legion of Space Marines and their own Primarch. And people have been doing that for a long time. Essentially, it just, the imagination is the limit. Like, you can make anything be, the 2nd and the 11th Legion and their Primarchs and kind of make it fit in with the lore. And that's pretty much what I did with my interpretation of the 11th Legion. They were, in my opinion, they were called the Celestial Sons. They had their Primarch, Alec, Elric, and whatnot. So there's a whole slew of videos on that if you guys want to check it out. I'll link it at the end of the video, but the playlist has like a ton of videos, and I'm still continuing the lore on that. And I'm even working on my own interpretation of the 2nd. So be sure to subscribe for that. But for now, I'm going to be talking about all the clues we have as to who or what these Primarchs and their legions were. So you can almost see what the symbol for the 2nd Legion of Astartes was, but of course GW had to put cracked glass and kind of make it all mysterious and whatnot. And I don't know about you, but I don't think there's anything behind it. Like, it's made that way just so you guys can like fill in the blanks. With that being said, there are many instances in the lore that kind of point that these legions did exist. The Emperor did in fact create 20 demigods underneath the gene labs of the Himalayan mountains. And Chaos did take them and spread them throughout the galaxy, and the Emperor did reclaim them, and they also fought during the Great Crusade, and perhaps even a little bit into the Heresy. So, what we can infer is that at one point, the legions of the Ultramarines just grew exponentially. So I think at one point the Ultramarines had like 200 to 300,000 Space Marines in their legion, where the normalcy was about 100,000 Space Marines. So you don't just gain that amount of Space Marines overnight or over a short period of time, because the recruitment process for creating a Space Marine, getting recruits, a lot of them don't survive. So to have their ranks double or even triple, that's unheard of. Like, there had to be something that happened, and what we believe is that the Emperor sent his executioners, Leman Russ and the Space Wolves, to purge the Primarch, and that said Primarch was the only one at fault for whatever it is he did. So once the Primarch was executed, then the Legion, which had nothing to do with whatever it is that the Primarch did, was inducted into the ranks of the Ultramarines. Now, what did the 2nd Legion Primarch do? It could be anything, honestly. Deciding not to fight for the Emperor anymore, deciding that the Imperial way of life, kind of protecting humanity from religion, from Xenos, was not the way. Maybe he sided with Chaos or found out something about Chaos. Maybe he found some secret about the Emperor or something like that, and the Emperor had to silence him, and that's what happened. And since we're already on the topic of the 2nd Legion, I'm going to go ahead and talk about a theory that I found on Reddit that perhaps gives us more insight as to what exactly happened between the 2nd Legion and the Rangda Xenocides. So if you guys are unaware, the Rangda are a type of Xenos that perhaps has mind control capabilities, and these capabilities are what maybe caused the Imperium to suffer one of their worst civil wars ever. The Rangda Genocides were so horrible that the Imperium had to cover this up, and perhaps this is why or how the Second Legion fell. Maybe they were mind controlled into killing each other until no Space Marines and even the Primarch was dead, or perhaps the Second Legion saw and kind of sided with the Rangda and they joined them willingly to fight against the Imperium. Again, like the theories could be anything, but it all revolves around this super secret event that was one of the worst defeats for the Imperium ever. Now, if you look into the lore of the Rangda, again, it's very sparse, but basically there were 3 Rangda wars. The first was a smaller conflict where the Imperium thought they were fighting the entire Rangda. The second Xenocide was when the Imperium finally realized that this was an entire empire in the stars, and because of this they had no choice but to commit and fight this war. Now the Emperor had no choice but to open the Labyrinth of Night, unleashing and utilizing a power of untold proportions, that of the Void Dragon, something that he never wanted to do, and because of this he was able to win the second Xenocide. Now these 2 wars were pretty brutal, but it fails in comparison to the third. This is when supposedly the Rangda had even more forces at their disposal, which doesn't really make sense, because if you know that you're fighting the Imperium, wouldn't you want to go all out to destroy this super, I guess, invasive humanoid empire? Because when you look at what the Imperium was doing during the 30K era, they were colonizing, conquering planets very aggressively. So if you're the Rangda, you would see this as a huge threat, so why not put all your effort into finally taking out this super aggressive superpower in the galaxy? But anyway, whether this is true or not, the third war was even bigger. So in this theory, the user, who goes by the name of Saramello, goes on to say that this doesn't really make sense, because again, why would a Xeno war need that level of redaction? Is it because of the death of a Primarch? Is it because a Legion was struggling to the point that they had no choice but to eliminate itself? It doesn't really make sense. So he thinks that the third Xenocide was just a cover-up to what really happened, and that was the revolt of the Second Legion. So now we go into the core of the theory here, that the Emperor was forced to open the Noctis Labyrinth to harness the Void Dragon's power. This was how they were able to defeat the Rangda in the second Xenocide. Now because of this, the Second Legion Primarch witnessed what happened during this event, and he saw the source of the power of the Emperor, which was that of the Catan. Now because of this, the Second Legion Primarch saw the power that the Catan can give him, so he wanted that power for himself. Why he wanted the power for himself? Was it a means to kind of usurp the Imperium, kind of take over as the Emperor himself, kind of start like a coup of sorts? It doesn't really go into effect as to how or why he's doing it, but regardless, let's say that the Second Legion Primarch wants this power for himself. So the Emperor, knowing this, he and Malcador are of course warp-powered beings. Now the Catan Dragon, if you're unaware, Catan are very weak against the warp, however they're able to create monoliths and obelisks that are able to shut off portions of the warp to the material realm. So again, this would be a form to weaken any warp-based creatures, aka the Emperor. So the Second Legion was then targeted for annihilation. So the Dark Angels, which were already used to kill like the Thunder Warriors, they allied with the Space Wolves, which were also really good at killing the Astartes. So these two, partnering up with the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence, were used as the execution force, and thus they were able to eliminate this Legion and their Primarch in its entirety, and as well as to keep this a secret from any and all other chapters and the Imperium at large. However, this was not an easy battle. This was a civil war that was brutal. It seems that the Dark Angels would take the brunt of the casualties because they were the ones that were being forced to fight this Legion on the battleground. However, armed with the Catan and the powers of the Necron, they were able to warp reality. So the Second Legion was able to put up a fight, even though they were being outnumbered and outgunned. He goes on to say that perhaps maybe even Guilliman or Dorn would have to step in, and since Guilliman was very close to the Second Primarch, given that the Ultramarines might have been able to take part of their forces into their own. This was a reason as to maybe why they swelled in numbers from like 100,000 to even 200,000. He was maybe trying to kind of appeal for the Second Legion not to be punished for the sins of their father. So because of that, maybe those Space Marines that did ally with not their own Primarch but that of Guilliman, they were probably mind wiped and forced into the legions of the Ultramarines. And thus the matter was resolved here and there. The Second Legion ceased to be, and the Second Legion's Primarch probably literally ceased to be due to the overwhelming power of the Catan, either corrupting himself to the point where he was overloaded with power and disintegrated, or maybe even kept under the Himalayan mountains as a prisoner. Now, in order to keep this even more secret, the Imperium probably labeled this the third Rangda Xenocide, as to kind of keep things a little more secretive, but also if anybody did dive deep enough, they could see this as maybe the reason, the truth on top of the underlying truth. And hence, this was the end of the Second Legion, falling not due to chaos, but still to something that the Emperor would deem worthy of censorship and obliteration. So with that being said, guys, let me know about what you think about this theory here, but let's go ahead and continue on with the rest of the lore that we know for the 2nd and the 11th Legion. So whatever it is that the 2nd Legion Primarch did, it was his and only his downfall and misfortune actions. Like, his Astartes had nothing to do with it. But it's like, well, if his Astartes has his gene seed, don't you think that they're more prone to do that? Or there wasn't any revolt or anything like that? Because I don't think an Astarte would just go ahead and let their Primarch go down. Obviously, they're going to try and protect, their gene father. And we can kind of infer that this did happen because since the Space Marines, they're all weapons of war. But why is it specifically that Leman Russ and his wolves are known as the Executioners, aka the Emperor's lapdog? And that's what Horus took advantage of when he sent them to take out Magnus and the Thousand Sons, which almost did happen. So the Space Wolves know how to fight Astartes, they know how to take down another Primarch, and Leman Russ would have done it if it weren't for Magnus being such a powerful psyker and also allying with Khazich, Chaos. Another instance is in the lore, we have a conversation between Malkador, the hero, or the Sigillite as it was at that time, talking with Primarch of the Imperial Fists, Rogel Dorn. And Dorn was basically talking about the missing Primarchs, and Malkador says something along the lines of, the Emperor ordered me to erase any information on the 2nd and the 11th Primarchs from your memory. However, he wasn't able to do this complete erasure, so their memories are heavily clouded, but it's still there. So, and that confirms that, again, the 2nd and the 11th were a thing. They actually did meet and interacted with other Primarchs and whatnot, so, Malkador confirmed it. Along those same lines, I forget who it was specifically, but I think it was Horus and another Primarch. They were talking in a hall of statues. Each statue, or plinth I believe it was called, was sculpted in the image of the 20 Primarchs. However, the plinth for the 2nd and the 11th was crushed, leaving behind rubble. Again, why would you go ahead and just leave the rubble there, if not for a reminder to the other Primarchs that, hey, this has happened before. Any insurrection, any revolt, anything that goes against the Imperium and the Emperor's wishes will be sentenced for obliteration. And I think that's kind of why the Emperor didn't just completely remove the plinths and make it seem as if they never existed. He left the rubble there for a reason. And then we have another instance in, I believe it was the Adeptus Custodi Codex, the most recent one, where on Terra there are some jails heavily guarded. Like, there are prisoners that if they escaped it would be a threat for the galaxy, a threat to the Imperium. And one such prisoner is known as Subject or Prisoner 11. What other important notion does the number 11 signify? The 11th Legion, the Primarch of the 11th, So maybe, I know that it doesn't directly interact with the second Primarch, but if they have Prisoner 11, maybe they have Prisoner 2. So maybe the Primarchs are currently held in prison on Terra for their actions. Because obviously, Primarchs are essentially demigods. You wouldn't just kill one without a huge reason to. Keep them in prison, let them out when the time is right, use them as a weapon of war against your enemies, or maybe psycho indoctrinate them for years upon years, make them forget their past actions, rewrite their brain to be more subservient, etc. So maybe they are on Terra the whole time, maybe not, but Prisoner 11, will we ever know who, what, or what it is? Time will only tell. But it's interesting to think of it that way because, like, for the longest time, GW was hush-hush on the 2nd and the 11th. But throughout the years, they've given us little bits and pieces of information to kind of help us shape the way these two Primarchs and their legions interacted with the grand world, the universe around them. Even between two of the most important Primarchs, Horus and that of Sanguinius, they even talk about their lost brothers. We all know Sanguinius was trying to find a cure for the Red Thirst, and the reason why he was trying so hard to cure this affliction for his Astartes is because he didn't want what happened to the Lost Primarchs and their legion to happen to his legion. He didn't want them to get expunged, obliterated. So that's why he was being very secretive about trying to cure this ailment, this gene defect for his Astartes. And the only person he can find and telling was Horus, his best friend. Because if he told the Emperor might have just pulled the trigger then and there and expunged a defective tool, a defective weapon. Because why have Space Marines that can go berserk and bloodthirsty, uncontrollable Space Marines, for that matter? So that is another huge contemplation that, maybe the 2nd and the 11th and their Astartes didn't betray the Imperium. Maybe they had some type of gene deficiency that made them go crazy or hard to control or something like that, to the point where they couldn't be used efficiently. And we've seen this throughout the Crusade, like when when Magnus got to be the Primarch of his legion, they were under strength, and they were basically just held in reserves until they could come to full combat power. So something might have happened with that psychically powerful legion that they weren't able to maintain their numbers. Maybe they fought alongside the Space Wolves to purge one of the Lost Primarchs in their legion. Like, the theories just go on and on and on, and it's very fun to ponder and think about what it could be. So with that being said, guys, let me know your thoughts, your ideas as to who are these Primarchs in their legion and what happened to them. Did they ally with some Xeno race? Did they get trapped in the warp? Did they travel outside the galaxy? Or maybe they're just being held in reserve until the Emperor needs them once again. So, thank you guys for listening. Can't wait to see your theories down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. As always, if you appreciate what we do here at One Mind Syndicate, a like would be really amazing. You can also hit that subscribe button and share with all your friends. And if you do want to support us even more, we do have a Patreon page where a simple $1 a month helps us bring you 40K videos each and every day. As always, this has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Always used to put my freedom first in any